Hey guys, thanks for checking out this video. I hope you had a safe and happy new year. Welcome to 2022. All the best to you. In this video, I'm going to be following up with my previous video where I was discussing some of the limitations on the Snowcat's drive system. In today's video, we are going to be a little over doubling the available torque for the drive tracks. We're going to replace the two drive motors with newer, larger displacement motors, and we're also going to replace the pumps with larger displacement pumps. And hopefully, well, not hopefully, I've run the numbers, and it should provide us more than we should need to propel the Snowcat in some deeper snow and up a little bit steeper grades. The way that the drive system was originally designed, the Snowcat wasn't supposed to really be in this form. It was really intended to be more of just a rolling chassis, a pair of seats, and a little bit of a roll bar. So we would have shaved off maybe about 150, 200 pounds of cab and seats and stuff. So the original drive system isn't terribly under-designed. It's just that the scope of the Snowcat has really increased since first conception. So that's I think really what has led to where we are right now. But anyway, yeah, we're gonna get going here. Let the Snowcat warm up. It's bitterly cold outside, minus 27 right now, and the Snowcat was sitting out there for a couple days. But it does start very well in the cold weather. Kind of an incidental design feature is by using the belt drive and the way I have the idler pulley arm set up here, starting the Snowcat in extreme cold, I'm talking minus 30, if the pumps were connected to the motor, you wouldn't be able to start it. The beautiful thing is, simply by disengaging the pumps, you just move that lever that way. I use a couple of bungee cords just to disengage it. You can start the engine with no load on it, and then you can allow it to warm up. Once it's warmed up, after 5 or 6 minutes, you can remove the bungee cords, engage the pumps, and you have drive. Like I said, if the pumps were permanently engaged through a flexible coupling or something like that, you would not be able to start the Snowcat in cold temperatures. So not really how I intended it to work, but it actually works really well. So anyway, we're gonna get going. I'm gonna let this warm up, have some of the snow melt off of the tracks, and we can get going. So we're back out in the garage. Things are warming up. The ice and snow is melting off the Snowcat, and here we have the two new larger displacement motors. So these are 5.9 cubic inches. The existing motors were 2.8, so we're just a little over double, which is about the largest displacement I could find in this width of a motor. Basically from the flange here to the outside head of these bolts is 5.5 inches, and these motors are about 5.56 or 5.7, so really close. The only I guess issue with this type of motor, got these from Surplus Center, is that they did not have a traditional port. They have, it's called a flange. Fortunately, Surplus Center makes these slick flange adapters. Basically goes from 2-port flange to NPT 1/2 inch. So this will basically allow me to use this motor in a traditional kind of plumbing setup, which is great. It does add a little bit of extra height here. It's really not an issue because I have a ton of space up above the motors in here, so that won't be any problems. Yeah, so first step is to decouple the tracks from the motors and then get them unbolted, disconnect the fittings. I'm hoping that I can do all of that without having to remove the drive shafts for the tracks. If I had to do that, the tracks would have to come off, the drive shafts would have to come off, and then I could get a little bit more room to slide stuff in there. Fingers crossed I don't have to do that, so let's give it a shot. So, real life, about 15 minutes has elapsed, and I was able to unbolt the two drive motors. The first one was a little trickier. I had to separate the flexible coupling. That's going to be a bit of a pain reassembling, so I'm not looking forward to that. But once you get the one motor out of the way, the other one is a lot easier just to slide out, and you don't have to mess around with that coupling at all. So yeah, basically next step, two new motors are going to get installed, bolted in, hook up the hoses, and before I go crazy and start pulling the drive pumps out, I'm just going to take it for a test drive. It'll work perfectly fine. The only difference is because we're increasing the displacement by about 2.1 times, our top speed is actually going to drop by about 2.1 times. So a little bit lower top speed, but we'll get a good idea of exactly how much torque is available, really because that's a property of the operating pressure of the pumps, and for the larger or smaller displacement, same operating pressure. Alright, so I was able to get the one motor in no problem, but because those two new motors are, I'm going to say, about 50 thou longer in the body than the previous motors, that's combined just enough to make it so it's not possible to get both motors in. I really made a design flaw in hindsight. I placed the tunnel sides maybe about an inch and a half too close together, so if I had to redo this, I would make the tunnel section probably 2 inches wider, just so I have more space. So this spacing is okay, that spacing is okay, but right in here I only have 11.5 inches, so in total I only have about 5 3/4 depth for each motor. The problem there is that yeah, you can't twist the motor into place. So basically the solution here is get one motor in, and I just used the cutoff wheel on the grinder and I cut a slot. So basically at this point that will allow me to drop the motor in without having to twist it, and it definitely will go now. But the gap between the two motor bodies is going to be pretty tight. We've got the motors installed, everything is reconnected, ready to go for a little test drive. I'll give you an idea how much space we have between the two ends of the motors. I'm going to say that's about a 1/4 inch, maybe 3/8 of an inch there, but it does all fit very nicely. Having cut that slot to drop the motor down worked beautifully. It also made inserting the little connecting link for the flexible coupling possible without having to take the track off. So that's a giant bonus. Saved a ton of time by doing that. Otherwise everything went back together very nicely. There is lots of room still under the floorboard, a good inch or so, where everything's connected up. And yeah, I'm gonna just grab a jacket. I'm gonna go take it for a test drive. Alright guys, well that was a huge success. Swapping out those motors made an incredible difference. The machine is far more responsive. It's able to just walk through the deepest snow. I was able to get through snow that was basically coming all the way up to the front bearings. It's able to climb pretty significant grades. Even when I brought it in here, I had driven the Snowcat in forward, and I figured, well, to work on the pumps now, it would be better to have it facing the other way. It just counter-rotates on the concrete, rubber on concrete, no problem whatsoever. Yeah, it's a incredible difference. So very pleased with how that turned out. The next step in the upgrades is a pair of larger displacement pumps. So like I'd said, by increasing the drive motor displacement, we lost about half the speed, which is correct. We came down to about 9 kilometers an hour. We were originally at 16 on the flat, and so yeah, we're right about 8 or 9 clicks now. Get the new pumps in, we should be able to go back up to about 15 kilometers an hour, which is going to be just perfect for this unit. I don't think any faster would be that great. So yeah, gonna get going on these pumps. Alright, we're well underway for the pump replacement, and depending whether or not you watched previous design videos, I built this kind of like a cab over truck, where the front of the Snowcat cab actually pivots on 2 bolts up front there, and then it rides on the 2 shocks in the middle here. So basically, you undo a couple of connections, you pull the 2 bolts out from those shocks in the tower, and the whole cab pivots forward, basically giving you access to the undercarriage. For a moment, I had considered just taking off the side plates and struggling through, working through and around, but then I said, well, let's give this a shot. And actually, once you get the fuel tank out from the fuel tank side, the battery out, all the extra stuff, it pivots over really easily. I was able to lift it myself without any issues. The little diesel heater is not going to dump out because the cap's on the proper side. That's great. Yeah, so basically we have very free and easy access to do all the work we need to in the tunnel here. Alright, it's been quite a while. I've probably been working at this for about 2 hours now, and finally at the point where both pumps are removed, and it was a little bit of a task on the second one. I had to pull part of the belly pan so I could get a gear puller onto the pulley. It was just kind of seized on there. The first pulley, basically I undid the set screw and it just dropped right off, so there's not much really holding it on there, but yeah. So now the plan is to start fitting the new pumps into place, and we'll see how that goes. Okay, so I just put the camera down for a second and I set the pumps into place. Everything is working out nice. I'm going to have to do a couple things to the pumps to get them configured so that they'll work in the machine properly. this one here, the work ports are facing forward, which is excellent, and the control levers are on the inside, which is good. Problem is, on this pump, the control ports are backwards. So, first thing to do is we'll get this on the bench, and we'll remove these 4 cap bolts, and we can actually pick that top up, spin it 180 degrees, and that will set the pump up so the work ports are facing forwards again. Then the next thing is to take the charge pump cap off and make sure that these are set up for the correct rotation. I don't know what they are right now. I'll confirm that. And then the other thing is to get the control levers set up so that the return spring, as you can see, the return to neutral is on this side in the front here. It's on the back, so we're going to have to flip this one around to the front side as well. So the right hand pump is going to need a little bit of reconfig. Alright, the pumps are both reconfigured now, so the work ports are towards the front of the machine. That's great. And I reconfigured the control levers so that the arm is on the bottom, so it aligns with the control cables. Basically, the spec of these motors, as far as footprint wise, all the dimensions align exactly with the other pumps, so it really is a bolt-on kind of upgrade. No modifications required, except for these larger pumps have a metric drive shaft or input shaft, 17 millimeters to be exact. And so that means that I'm going to have to modify my drive pulleys here. These are 5/8. So 5/8 works out to be like, I think it's 15 3/4 millimeter. And we're gonna have to enlarge these holes just a touch. Alright guys, well, back out here in the garage after supper, and I've got pretty much everything buttoned up. I did have to reroute this one line here. It's temporarily run upward just because I had to change a fitting. I thought they were all the same fittings, but unfortunately they're not. But I do have some adapters and I was able to make it work. So plumbing is done. The other thing is I did change the way that I had the control cables set up. Now originally these little heim joints were down closer to the bottom and they were pretty much impossible to access. So like adjusting them or whatever, it was just almost impossible. So what I did is I just took a piece of this I don't know, 2-inch channel and extended them up, and I actually slotted the holes so that these are now adjustable, so I can move them up and down, I can move them to side, I can basically get these control levers right in line, or sorry, the control cables right in line with the levers, and that makes for less binding and a lot smoother in the control action. So I'm really pleased in how that turned out. What else? Not much. Basically got all the hoses rerun. So the last thing I'm going to do on this video is I've actually decided that I don't necessarily like where I have these shocks located. Having them kind of mid-cab, it's a little too much leverage, so even with the preload on the springs at maximum, the springs or the shocks do bottom out, so I'm going to pull them out from that location and I'm going to actually move them back to the corners here. And it turns out after I built the machine that I actually have a good amount of space here where I can plant those shocks onto the lower part of the frame, and then I'll build a shock tower up and inside of the back of the cab, and then that way I won't have to set the shocks preload as high. I think I'll get a little bit better ride. Again, it all comes down to just not having everything, you know, together when I was building the machine. I added the shocks and the shock tower before the cab even existed, so it was hard to judge where everything was going to land, but now that we have it all finished, I have a better idea. So yeah, next step is to quickly fabricate a little shock tower that's going to go there, and a couple tabs that are just going to attach onto the back frame. Alright guys, well, sorry I wasn't able to capture the final assembly of the Snowcat. Getting the pumps installed into the machine was running pretty late into the evening, and I ran into a problem where when I went to put the cab back down onto the shocks on the middle supports, I couldn't align the two shocks and lower the cab myself, because I have to lower the cab and I really needed a second person to kind of fiddle with those shocks. So I fast forwarded to an upcoming project and ended up just moving the shocks to a more accessible location. So it turns out I have a nice amount of space to be able to put the shocks right at the back here, and that makes it ride a little bit better. Having the shocks kind of mid chassis, even with the maxed out preload, they were bottoming out, and it was just a little bit too rough. So moving it to the back here, I can soften up the ride. I can accommodate a little bit more load in the cab, so accessories and whatnot, and it'll ride a little bit better. But overall, it maneuvers a whole lot better now that it has the appropriate sized pumps and motors. Like I said, I just a little over doubled the torque available to the tracks, so that's excellent. And adding the larger pumps kind of compensated for increase of the motor displacement, so that's great. Top speed, we lost in total about 1 kilometer an hour. We were peaking out about 16 previously with the smaller pumps and motors. We're down to 15 now, so I think we're in pretty good shape overall. Got a couple more projects coming up for the Snowcat, but as it stands right now, it's ready to go. It's capable of tackling deep snow and pretty much anything I can throw at it. So I'm looking forward to getting some action videos, heading out on the trails, and just having some fun with this thing finally. Anyway, thanks for checking out the video. Stay warm, and we'll see you soon.